Are you ready to hear a truth that makes even battle-hardened veterans lower their voices? Forget the movies. Forget the neat little myths where heroes announce themselves with slow-motion music and perfect hair. What I'm about to tell you was never meant to exist in any archive. No official photos, no commendations, no clean paperwork trail, just a handful of men who still wake up in the dark when rain hits a roof the wrong way. Picture this. In 1968, deep in Vietnam's highlands, they drop one man into a forward base that runs on noise. Rotor wash, rock music, shouted jokes, machine guns slung like crowns. No squad with him, no heavy weapon, no swagger, just a boonie hat, a battered rifle, and a knife strapped to his chest like a threat. The elite soldiers laugh at him. They call him a tourist. 48 hours later, their laughter turns into something older than fear. Primal. Because this Australian ghost does things that don't make sense. He walks through minefields like they're playgrounds. He makes mortar crews vanish without a shot. He crawls into enemy camps, steals their ears, and leaves them alive just so they can suffer the fact that he could have ended them whenever he wanted. And then comes the part that made High Command try to erase him. Because once you believe one man can weaponize silence, you start asking questions no one wants asked. Strap in. This is the untold legend of Corporal Logan, the Phantom, who taught special forces how to breathe like the dead, and you have to stay to the end. Because the final twist doesn't just change the story, it changes what you thought a soldier even is. FOB 2, Quantum Province, 1968. Forward operating base. 2 wasn't really a base. It was a fever dream with sandbags, a boiling cauldron of testosterone and exhaustion, where helicopters landed every 10 minutes like angry insects, and the air tasted permanently of burnt aviation fuel, sweat, and cigarettes that never went out. Someone always had a radio blasting rock music too loud, as if volume could keep the jungle from listening. The Americans who worked out of FOB 2, Rangers, Special Forces, Recon detachments stitched together into teams with animal names, called it controlled chaos. An outsider would have called it a madhouse. These men lived loud. They believed loud meant alive. Their doctrine was simple. If the jungle was a monster, you beat it with bigger teeth. Machine guns, napalm, artillery. You turned the green world into smoke and dared the enemy to come back. And for a while, it worked. Until one stifling afternoon, when the heat pushed past 35 in the shade and even the dogs stopped moving. One helicopter touched down on the pad without markings. No unit patch, no tail number anyone recognized. The rotors slapped the air like a warning. Nobody jumped out with crates, no ammo, no mail, no reinforcements, just one man stepping onto the scorched metal like he'd walked out of a different war. He wasn't big, he wasn't pretty, he wasn't dressed like an action hero. His uniform was faded down to the color of old dust. He wore a soft boonie hat with the brim trimmed. No helmet, no body armor, no fancy webbing filled with pouches and grenades. He carried an old kit bag in one hand, and in the other, a rifle that looked like it had survived a car crash and kept going. But what locked everyone's attention wasn't the rifle, it was the knife. A long, dark Fairbairn Sykes fighting dagger strapped to his chest, handle down, like a statement. Like he wanted anyone watching to understand exactly how close he intended to get. Across the sandbags, Cobra Team was off a mission, and in the dangerous mood that comes with survival, half relief, half arrogance. Sergeant Rico Bulldozer Alvarez, built like a wrecking ball and proud of it, leaned on a crate and laughed loud enough for the whole base. "Command, send us a babysitter?" he shouted. "Are we opening a kindergarten for lost tourists now?" The laughter rolled through FOB 2 like a wave. The man didn't react. He didn't look offended. He didn't even blink faster. He just adjusted the strap on his kit bag and stepped forward like the noise was weather. Captain Marcus Stone, Cobra Team's commander, met him halfway. Stone was the kind of officer who didn't trust paper. He trusted patterns, gut, the tiny things men did when nobody was watching. The transfer packet Stone received was thinner than a diner menu. One page, a stamp, a signature, Corporal Logan, attached via exchange program. Deep reconnaissance tasks, indefinite period. No record of prior operations, no evaluations, no welcome to the team. Just a name and an order. Stone looked up. Logan was scanning the base perimeter like he was counting exits in a burning building. His eyes didn't linger on people. They registered angles, shadows, cover, movement, like a predator mapping a new hunting ground. Stone felt something cold slide under his ribs. Not fear, recognition. This man wasn't here to learn from them. He was here because they were doing something wrong. The first introduction in the barracks was an ice bath. Cobra Team prided itself on crude humor and loud bonding. Logan refused the offered beer, skipped the debrief, didn't answer when Bulldozer tossed insults like rocks. Instead, Logan sat in the corner and took out a whetstone. He began sharpening his dagger with slow, methodical strokes like a priest preparing a ritual. Shk, shk, shk. Metal on stone became the only answer to every question. The Americans found it irritating, then they found it unsettling. Because men who are truly dangerous aren't loud. They don't need to be. That night, Captain Stone told his deputy in a low voice, "He's not here to learn how to fight from us." His deputy snorted. "Then why's he here?" Stone watched Logan's chest rise and fall so shallowly it barely moved. "Because we're too loud to survive," Stone said. Nobody took him seriously. Not yet. Operation Nightingale. 2 days later, Cobra team moved out on Operation Nightingale. 6 men. A simple recon on a suspected logistics depot in the tri-border area, where Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia blurred together like bruises. The jungle greeted them with a silence so thick it felt heavy, like wet cloth over your mouth. No birds, no insects. The air itself felt wrong, like it was waiting. Bulldozer kept whispering into the radio. Little updates, little jokes, the way Americans did to keep the dark from pressing in too close. Logan on point didn't whisper. He moved like smoke. He paused every few meters, head slightly tilted, tasting the wind like a wolf. He was slow, infuriatingly slow, and it made Bulldozer's patience rot. "We're falling behind schedule," Bulldozer hissed. Logan didn't answer. Then the green wall exploded. Not a clumsy skirmish, an execution. 3 machine gun nests opened fire from the ridge above, overlapping arcs like a net. Mortar rounds began falling with sickening precision, walking closer, bracketing the team into a tightening ring of death. Captain Stone slammed his handset key. Static. He keyed again. More static. They were being jammed. The trap was perfect. They were in a kill zone designed to erase them in under a minute. The Americans hit the mud, pinned. Return fire frantic and useless into a ridgeline they couldn't see. Tracers stitched the leaves. Dirt and splinters rained down. For the first time in months, Cobra team tasted a kind of fear that didn't come with adrenaline. It came with inevitability. And then, in the middle of that inferno, Corporal Logan did the unthinkable. He didn't fire. He dropped his pack, and he ran toward the danger. Bulldozer shouted something. Maybe a curse, maybe Logan's name, but the sound died under the gunfire. Logan dove into a knot of thick roots at the edge of the team's position. What the Americans hadn't seen, what Logan's predator eyes caught instantly, were 3 claymores rigged behind them, their wires threaded through brush like spider silk. Retreat meant instant death. They were trapped from both sides. Logan pulled his knife. The blade flashed once, quick as a blink, slicing tripwires with terrifying precision. 1, 2, 3. Hands steady, as if mortars weren't landing 10 meters away. Then he grabbed a fallen M79 grenade launcher from a wounded man and fired a single round. Not at the enemy, but into a mangrove swamp to their left. The explosion sent a geyser of black water and mud into the air, a distraction, a gap in the enemy's attention. Logan grabbed Stone's shoulder and pointed into the swamp. Waist-deep muck, tangled roots. A place no map called passable. A suicide route. Stone looked at it and understood. Swamp or body bags. They plunged in. For 45 minutes, Cobra team crawled through the intestines of hell. Mangrove roots twisting like bones, stagnant water that stank of rot. Leeches clinging wherever skin was exposed. Enemy patrols scoured the solid ground above them, boots and voices passing so close that the Americans could hear the enemy breathing. No one dared slap a leech. No one dared cough. Logan led them with an uncanny sense of direction, guided by currents in the sludge and subtle shifts in temperature, as if the swamp was speaking to him in a language only he knew. When they finally emerged on the far side, covered in filth and shaking with adrenaline, they realized something that hit harder than any mortar round. They were alive, and they were miles away from the ambush site, safe ground the enemy believed was impossible to cross. Bulldozer stared at Logan with a look that wasn't mockery anymore. It was awe. Logan sat on a fallen log, peeled a leech off his forearm like it was lint, and began cleaning his rifle with calm, methodical motions. No gratitude demanded, no speech. Just survival. In that moment, Cobra team's skepticism died. They had walked into a slaughterhouse, and the Phantom had opened a back door only he could see. The 7 nights of 0200 survival didn't bring relief. It brought a new kind of torture. For 7 consecutive nights, at exactly 0200, FOB2 was hit by 3 mortar rounds. Always 3. Always the same pattern. A campaign of sleep deprivation designed with mathematical cruelty. The shells would slam into the center of the compound, just enough to kill a man if he was unlucky, just enough to wake everyone if he wasn't, and then silence. By the time sirens began wailing, the mortar crew had already dismantled their tube and vanished into the rainforest. Captain Stone responded the American way. Artillery, napalm, burning the hills until the horizon glowed orange like a wound. They turned acres of jungle into charcoal and convinced themselves no human could survive it. At 0200 the next night, 3 mortars fell again, mocking them. The base began to break, not physically, psychologically. Elite soldiers sat with wide eyes, waiting for the whistle of incoming death. Men who charged bunkers now flinched at distant pops. Officers stopped walking exposed ground. Briefings moved deeper underground. The jungle had learned how to haunt them. Then one night Logan finally spoke. He watched the burning tree line with quiet disgust and said, "Burning a forest to catch a mouse isn't strategy, it's panic." Stone turned. "Then what do you call it?" Logan's eyes stayed on the dark. "Hunting." While the rest of the base prepared for another loud, useless bombardment, Logan stripped down his gear. No rifle, no grenades, just dark fatigues, his Fairbairn Sykes dagger, and a tightly coiled roll of thin communication wire. He slipped over the perimeter at dusk and disappeared into the jungle like a thought you can't hold on to. The base waited, tense, watching clocks. Midnight, then 0200 came and went, and nothing happened. No whistle, no explosions, just the natural breathing of the jungle night. Men checked their watches like they didn't trust reality. At dawn, a lone figure emerged from the tree line. Logan, mud-caked, unhurried, no scratches that anyone could see, no sign of a firefight. He walked into the command bunker where Stone was on his fourth cup of coffee and dropped something heavy onto the map table. Clank, a metal optical sighting mechanism, part of a Soviet-made mortar, still warm, smeared with something dark that wasn't mud. Stone stared. "You didn't fire a shot," Stone said. Logan wiped his hands on a rag. Didn't need to. He picked up Stone's coffee mug, took a sip like it belonged to him, and walked out to get breakfast. 2 days later, a long-range patrol found the mortar site. The three-man crew hadn't been hit by artillery or bullets. They were simply gone from the fight, one by one, in total silence. The wire Logan had taken was missing. The message spread through a phobe 2 like electricity. The jungle had a new predator, and it didn't roar. From that night on, the mortar curse ended, replaced by something worse for the enemy: respect. The Bell. Weeks later, Cobra team found the kind of target that makes intelligence analysts sweat. A sprawling enemy logistics base hidden in a valley that didn't officially exist on their maps. Dozens of sentries, smoke from cooking fires, the smell of unwashed bodies, a troop concentration that outnumbered Cobra team 20-1. Stone's hand moved automatically toward his radio handset. Mark it, call thunder, turn it into a crater. Years of doctrine lived in his thumb. Logan pushed the antenna down. No words, just a slow shake of the head. Bomb them and you destroy what you came to learn. Attack now and you die. Then Logan did something that looked like insanity. He stripped. Off came webbing. Rifle set down. Boots removed. Loud metal pouches laid aside. He stood in socks and faded fatigues with nothing but his knife and a small canvas pouch. Stone stared. "What are you doing?" Logan's voice was barely above a breath. "Stealing." He signaled the team to hold position and maintain absolute radio silence. Then he dissolved into the foliage so completely that even his own teammates lost him within seconds. The next 2 hours were torture. Cobra team lay pressed into the mud, watching the enemy camp through optics, imagining Logan captured, interrogated, executed. Time slowed. Every twig snap sounded like the beginning of disaster. Stone checked his watch 100 times. Then a hand touched Bulldozer's shoulder from behind. Bulldozer nearly jumped out of his skin. Logan crouched there as if he'd been sitting behind them the whole time. Calm breathing, steady pulse. He emptied his pouch onto the jungle floor. First, a folded hand-drawn map on rice paper. Supply routes, rest points, caches, corridors the CIA had chased for years. Second, a small tarnished brass bell, the kind the enemy tied to tripwire alarms. The bell hit Cobra team harder than any explosion. Because to get it, Logan had to have been inside the perimeter, under their noses, between tents, close enough to hear men breathe. He could have killed them. He chose not to. He looked at the bell like it was an empty joke. Then he finally spoke, voice dry and flat. "They rely too much on noise." He tapped the bell once with his thumb. It didn't ring. "I removed their ears," he whispered. "Now they're deaf." Down in that valley, the enemy still cooked rice and cleaned weapons, unaware a ghost had walked among them, stolen their secrets, and left them alive purely to let the fear ferment. That kind of dominance can't be bombed into existence. It can only be felt. Snake Pit. The operation they later called Snake Pit began with a radio whisper that hit the bunker at Phobe 2 like an electric shock. A fortified enemy complex dug beneath a civilian village, concrete firing slits, reinforced entrances, and a cluster of heat signatures that weren't soldiers. Civilians, packed into a side wing, used as living shields. Higher Command did the math the way Higher Command always does. Take it at any cost. Stone stared at the map and tasted sickness. A frontal assault meant tragedy. Artillery would solve the bunker and stain everything else forever. Then Logan studied the grainy photos like a surgeon. He didn't see a fortress. He saw vents, air shafts, improvised chimneys, places where a sealed container still had to breathe. And he listened to locals talk about livestock vanishing near the tree line, about certain thickets nobody went near after dark. Where others saw jungle superstition, Logan saw inventory. That afternoon, Logan vanished into the bush with a canvas sack and thick improvised gloves. No rifle, no grenades, just his dagger. For hours he moved like a collector, patient as a biologist and cold as a hunter. By nightfall, the sack wriggled like a living nightmare. Inside, a handful of venomous snakes, angry, alive, responsive. Cobra team formed a perimeter around the bunker, not aimed at doors but at escape routes. Medics positioned near the side where hostages might emerge. Everyone understood one brutal truth. If this went wrong, they would be blamed for an unauthorized experiment. Logan crawled alone to the rear of the complex, found the main ventilation shafts half hidden under foliage, and loosened the grates. He threaded the sack's mouth against the flow of warm air rushing out. Then, one by one, he coaxed the snakes into the dark. Minutes later, sound rose from beneath the earth. Not commands, not disciplined shouting. The raw, animal noise of men meeting something they could not intimidate. Panic spread through the bunker faster than fire. Enemy fighters burst burst out of entrances and hatches without formation, some clutching rifles, some running as if chased by invisible teeth. They ran straight into Cobra Team's pre-plotted arcs, controlled bursts, precise shots, cold geometry. The bunker emptied itself, and in the chaos, the civilians, shaken, stunned, were abandoned by their captors and stumbled into the open alive. When dawn came, the village stood, civilians breathing, and the bunker complex was neutralized with minimal friendly risk. Officially, it was a successful operation. Unofficially, everyone at FOB2 called it the night the jungle joined Cobra Team as an ally, invited into war by a man who thought like a predator instead of a bureaucrat. Logan walked back at first light with empty hands like he'd merely returned borrowed tools to their natural owners. The Valley of Mists, then the war changed again. Not with mortars, not with ambushes, with a single neat collapse in broad daylight. An officer fell near a sandbag line, pointing at a map board 1 second and on the ground the next. The sound arrived late, distant, like an afterthought. 24 hours later, it happened again. Another officer, another delayed crack. The base didn't panic at first. Then it started moving briefings underground. Then it stopped walking exposed areas. Then hardened sergeants began tightening their shoulders every time they stepped into open ground. A thinking adversary was hunting leaders, a specialist marksman who didn't play by the book. He shifted angles, waited out bombardments, refused bait. Morale corroded, and in closed-door conversations, one name kept surfacing as the only counter: Logan. Logan studied the pattern like he studied tripwires, timing, victim choice, terrain. It all pointed to a strip locals called the Valley of Mists, a low saddle where fog rolled in thick and stayed late. Normal units avoided it. For a patient shooter, it was paradise. Logan requested that sector as his hunting ground. Then he did something that made every instructor in every school shake their head. He chose a shallow, muddy depression with terrible elevation and worse drainage as his hide. A bad position. Unless you weren't trying to outgun the sniper, unless you were trying to outweight him. At dusk, monsoon rain rolled in like a curtain. Logan lowered himself into the mud until the earth hugged his torso like cold cement. He wrapped his rifle in damp cloth and vegetation to break up its outline and muffle any mechanical whisper. Then he let the rain do the rest, erasing him. Hours passed. The valley filled with fog so thick the world shrank to 10 meters and sound became the only map. Leeches arrived. They crawled over his boots, his legs, under straps. Logan didn't move. He let them feed. He accepted the slow, continuous loss of blood like it was a tax. He slowed his breathing to the dead man rhythm he'd shown Cobra Team like a party trick, so shallow his chest barely moved. Back at FOB2, officers grew restless. Counter-sniper doctrine demanded checklists and timelines. Logan offered silence. On the third day, the rain eased to a lighter drizzle. Individual sounds rose above the general hiss, and Logan heard it. A brief metallic click, then the softest possible mechanical glide. A bolt, not gear clatter, not random movement, a deliberate action. The valley rearranged itself in Logan's mind. Distance, echo, delay. The way the sound bounced off wet ground and tree trunks. A faint creak off to the side, overlaying the click like a signature. A firing solution appeared in his head as clearly as a drawn line. He didn't see the rival sniper. He didn't need to. Logan exhaled once, slow and squeezed. One shot, muted by damp air, then silence. No second shot came back. No retaliation. Hours later, a sweep team found the rival marksman in a beautifully constructed hide, weapon still aimed at the same open patches he'd exploited for days. One shot had ended him. For the logbooks, it became a neat line, enemy sniper neutralized after prolonged operation. For Cobra Team, it became something else entirely. A story about a man who lay 3 days in mud under monsoon rain, letting leeches drink him, waiting for a sound in fog, and killing a ghost without ever seeing him. From that moment on, whenever someone mentioned snipers near FOB2, they spoke more quietly as if the valley itself might still be listening. The twist they never wrote down: after the Valley of Mists, something strange happened. Logan stopped appearing in places where he should have been. No debrief, no laughter, no late night sharpening in the barracks, just absence. Stone went looking for him because commanders learned quickly that men like Logan don't just wander off. They vanish for a reason. Stone checked flight logs. The helicopter that supposedly brought Logan in, no record. Stone checked the exchange roster. No Australian SAS attachment listed. He checked the transfer papers again because maybe he'd missed something. The file was gone, not misplaced, gone like it had never existed. Stone finally confronted the intelligence major at FOB2, a man who always smelled like paperwork and cigarette ash. Stone put it bluntly, "Where is Corporal Logan's file?" The major stared at him like Stone had asked for a unicorn. "Who?" Stone felt his stomach drop. "The Australian, the Phantom, the one you all know." The major's eyes stayed blank. He reached for a folder, flipped it open, then slowly shook his head. "Captain," he said carefully, "there is no Australian exchange corporal assigned to this base." Stone left the bunker with a cold sweat that had nothing to do with Vietnam. Back in his hooch, he opened his footlocker and found something that hadn't been there before. A small tarnished brass bell, enemy tripwire alarm, sitting on top of his neatly folded uniforms like an offering. And beside it, a strip of comms wire, coiled tight. No note, no explanation. Just proof that whoever Logan was, he could still walk into secure places, still move unseen, still leave a message without a sound. Stone stared at the bell until the edges of his vision blurred. Because the implication wasn't just that High Command wanted Logan erased, it was worse. It meant Logan hadn't been erased after the fact. He had been built to be erasable from the start, a man without a record, a weapon without a name, a ghost that could be deployed, used, and denied. And suddenly Stone understood why Logan had always looked at Fob 2 like a hunter studying a cage. Logan wasn't just teaching them how to survive the jungle, he was proving something to someone higher up, that loud armies could be guided by silent men, that fear could be engineered, that war could be won without anyone ever knowing who held the knife. Stone never saw Logan again, not on another mission, not at another base, not after the war, but decades later, when Stone was old and the world had moved on, he would still sometimes wake at 0200, heart steady, breath shallow, listening for the sound of mortars that never came. And in the dark, he would remember one truth Logan had never bothered to say out loud. In the jungle, the most dangerous weapon isn't firepower, it's silence, and the most terrifying soldier isn't the one who kills, it's the one who can disappear so completely that history can't even prove he was there.